Hello viewers, and thanks for tuning in once again. I would first like to thank you for the wonderful amount of views I've been getting on my Do We Need an Magna Carta video. It's very humbling and I appreciate you bigly for it. You shitlords are wonderful. So, let's move on. A modernity and commodity building a generation of idiots. Alternatively, perhaps more sinisterly, a generation of useful idiots. Mollycoddled masses of morons who are consuming more data but are failing to savour that data. One of the greatest ironies of our age is the fact that information is ubiquitous, literally within brushing distance, yet ignorance seems to grow, in particular among those we dub millennials.
If you were to list your three favourite things about the EU, Holly, what would they be?
They would be, well, definitely the NHS.
We're watching the stirrings of fascism in Europe again.
For a demographic couched in e-interaction since infancy in some cases, they remain painfully unaware, by and large, of their value, or lack thereof, as pawns. I can recall watching videos of pro-EU marches last summer after the Brexit vote, and some of the people interviewed voiced their displeasure at what they saw as being forced to exit were reduced to tears as they were speaking. Of course, they overlooked the fact that their apathy in bit was key in allowing older people that are more likely to vote to swing the result, thankfully. But the vitriol the young poured on their elders was unprecedented, and especially since one of the follies of youth means idealism often clouds your perceptions of reality. I was born in 1983, so I've grew up and lived in a Britain that's only existed as a part of the EEC, the European Economic Community. And when I was 9, the UK signed the Maastricht Treaty that formed the EU and set the path for the euro to exist. My parents were 12 when the UK joined the EEC and 14 at the time of the original referendum in 1975. My grandmother at the time voted in favour of remaining in the EEC. My grandfather voted in favour of leave. My grandmother's a prime example of heeding the words of experience. The UK was a vastly different place in the early 70s to now, and although change is inevitable, and the world is a smaller place with the inception of technology, even after the death of Concord, many differences in the space between 1973 and 2016 have been detrimental to society, and people of my grandmother's generation can see this clearly. Another thing I noticed, when I was an idealistic leftist student in my early 20s, I saw how corporate influences saturated my campus. We had a building that obviously some silly architect was paid through the nose for. It was designed sort of like an upside down ship, and the potential space of the building, half of it was eaten up by a huge open gap, which, you know, could have been used for much more facilities and classes, but, you know, he knew best, apparently. Anyway, I digress. The media centre at my campus was Apple accredited, so within every suite of rooms, you had iMacs and Power Mac G5s. And at the far side of the vast atrium of my campus were huge banners running the length of the wall, and they would proclaim all the various brands and partnerships and sponsorships that were associated with the campus. And many of them had European Union connections. So, across the pond, with trade deals like NAFTA and TPP, thankfully TTIP has been ruined by Brexit, thankfully. I'm under no illusions that American colleges probably get fed in a similar manner with corporate messages.
My fellow graduates, I encourage each and every one of you to pursue your dreams today. But never forget where you came from, because those who will follow in our footsteps, they deserve the same support that we were given during our journeys. Thank you.
The average student debt in the US is around $37,000, and that total is £44,000 in the UK. There's about 532,000 British students and 1.8 million bachelor's students in America. Much of their financial outlays while they're at college is covered by loans. Their interest and further student spending goes into the economy via young people. Higher education equals big business, and for impressionable minds overwhelmed by the adventure of starting a new life, often away from home, colleges offer a peace of mind for their customer base, as well as confirmation bias. The customer's always right, after all. Confirmation bias, well-off lecturers with tenure and a steady flow of alumni donations, added to various other money streams, equals a good business model that no one in campuses is in a hurry to disrupt.
In virtually every field within academia, the great majority of professors identify strongly with both leftist causes and the Democratic Party. Renowned sociologist Seymour Lipset was one of the first to examine this question. Based on a number of surveys taken since World War II, Lipset concluded that academics are more likely than any other occupational group to identify their views as left or liberal. Professors tend to support a wide variety of egalitarian social and economic policies. They're far more likely to vote for Democratic candidates, and in many cases back leftist third parties. While Lipset based his conclusions on faculty surveys from the 1950s through the early 1980s, more recent studies show that the professoriate's commitment to leftist politics has only strengthened.
It is evident that the support for the EU is deeply rooted in campus training camps, full of students who then go into business who possess mostly a similar ethos. Pro-EU, social justice and feminism are all convenient methods of dulling a mind readying it for the large, faceless corporate world. With all-encompassing philosophies like feminism on campus, students give society their minds via liberal propaganda.
What comes to your mind when you hear the term conservative?
Status quo, don't want to change things, kind of want to keep society back, keep moving forward.
Keeping things just a little bit more how they used to be.
I think that most of their worldview is based on thinking that things have gotten the way that they are for a reason. So they don't see any reason to try to change things or like help people who are in worse situations because they think that they somehow must deserve it.
Fiscally careful, less willing to new political ideas emerging.
People who are, wealthy or privileged, they think that somehow they must deserve that. And so they see no reason to check their power or check their limits or any of that.
I guess conservatives, people think that their ideas are sort of like primitive and they're not like modern. They don't suit this modern age that we're in.
I would define a conservative as somebody who's regressive, who fights for the status quo, and doesn't believe that there's a need to move this country forward.
Then venture into the working world, where laissez-faire capitalism tells drones in the hive to give corporations their money. Once inculcated, once the chase is over and the kill actioned, you're meaningless fodder under the horseshoe of globalism that use left and right wing on their vulture to pick liberty clean. With SJWs picking your bleached bones clean if anyone dares to question the status quo and voice a belief that greater nuance exists in a once interesting world of different people and different views. The old saying goes, everything in moderation. Capitalism and socialism possess beneficial traits, but both of them need tempering to make sure that they work best in concert rather than against one another. And they work in concert now in the most sinister of ways to make the new generation compliant.
I try to stay out of them as much as I can because I don't understand them and I don't like them and I don't feel justified to really say anything. But currently it's 12 a.m. and my rights as a human being are about to be taken away.
So viewers, what do you think? Please comment below and please remember to like, share and subscribe, and as always remember, don't roll your eyes too much, they may fall out of your head.